Welcome to Pinnacle's 2025 MLB season betting preview. We are going to go over World Series futures, MVP, Cy Young, and give you our favorite plays on the board. I'm Anthony Bruno, joined by Scott Cullen and Ben Barclay on behalf of Pinnacle, your trusted sportsbook for over 25 years, offering the best odds and best payouts in the industry. All right, fellas, before we get to World Series futures, I want to start with the awards. So let's start with MVP. And the way we're going to do this, we're going to go around the room, regardless of league, whether it's AL or NL. I want you guys to give me your favorite play to win MVP. So just to set the stage here, Aaron Judge and Shohei Ohtani, rightfully so, are massive favorites in their respective leagues to win MVP. Ohtani coming off a ridiculous 50-50 season, Judge coming off a 58 home run season, insane power numbers. So they are obviously at the top of the board here, but I want to start things off with Scott. Scott, are you looking at either of these two guys, or is there someone else you're looking at to win MVP?
Well, I agree that Ohtani and Judge are deserving favorites, but I think what you run into is there's not a ton of upside because everyone recognizes that they're deserving favorites. Like if Aaron Judge hits 60 home runs, it's going to be really tough for somebody else to win MVP. And if Shohei Ohtani, now that he's pitching again this year, that tends to put him over the top in any of his MVP seasons because, you know, his offensive numbers are already great, but if you add in strong pitching on top of it, it's impossible for anyone else to match it. So if we're looking for value, I'm going to go to the Toronto Blue Jays for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Could be a contract year, and the path really here is if Judge, runs into injury problems, is not mashing 60 home runs, could Guerrero, go for 40 home runs? He hit 30 last season, hit 323, had a 940 OPS. Like those numbers are probably not quite MVP, but he also started relatively slowly. And so if Guerrero is hitting right from the start of the season, maybe he can get to 40 plus home runs. And if he does that and the Jays are exceeding expectations and the Yankees are not meeting expectations, I think there's a path there. And I think one of the reasons to look for this in the American League is it seems there are fewer viable candidates. Like if I look through the board in the National League, it seems there are a lot more players who have a real shot behind Ohtani, whereas in the American League, it seems like there's really just a few who have a real legitimate shot to challenge Judge. And so one of those, I think, is Vladimir Guerrero Jr. He's plus 1674, I believe, is the price at Pinnacle, which, there's some upside there that you could get value on Vlad.
Blue Jays fans loving the sound of that. Scott starting things off with a bang, going to Vladdy. He's had some rough seasons during his 6-year career. Last year finally bounced back, had very close to, and you probably could consider it an elite season. Can he replicate that? Can he do what we saw him do in 2021? I think it's definitely possible, but I like it, and especially at that price. All right, so we start things off with Vladdy. Over to you, Ben. Who are you looking at for MVP? And like I said, it could be in the AL or the NL. Give me your favorite play on the board.
So I'm going to stay in the AL here, and Scott made a great point there. The pool of players behind Judge, as opposed to behind Ohtani in the NL, I think there's just better value and less candidates to actually take it from him. And the one guy I have circled is Julio Rodriguez of the Seattle Mariners. You can get him at about 20-1 here, which I think is great value. He has never put it together for an entire season, which is, of course, the key in an MVP season. He's had slow starts which have really sunk him, and then kind of post-All-Star break, he's taken off and been one of the best players in the MLB, kind of what the Mariners need from him from the start. He's got the 5 tools, and I think there too, he's going to be the straw that stirs the drink for the Mariners offense. He has to be. And a big thing for them with the pitching staff, if they can just get into the playoffs, potentially challenge for the division. I understand the MVP is not a playoff dependent award, but it'll certainly help his case. And I'm thinking too, there could be some voter fatigue when it comes to both Judge and Ohtani. I know Yankees, Dodgers, probably, maybe not even the case with voter fatigue, but I mean, the league is always trying to push new players and push other names as well. And I think Julio could be one of those guys. He can do it all. So I think at the number 2, it's a price thing, 20-1, great value. Put like $10 on that, can pay you about 200. So Julio Rodriguez would be my pick in the AL.
All right, I love it. Listen, it's never a bad idea to go with these 5-tool studs because I feel like in order to win MVP, obviously you have to have like an insane WAR season, right? So you have to have a great 5-tool season, steal a bunch of bases, put up power numbers, or you just have to have like an insane power season like we've seen Judge put up, or even in the year that Vladdy didn't win MVP in 2021, had insane power numbers. All right, so I'm actually going to go over to the NL for my pick to win MVP. And I am looking at Kyle Tucker, who is now a member of the Chicago Cubs. So he missed basically half the season last year due to a fractured shin, but he was having a career season in 2024. I'll just go over some of his numbers. If you look at it over a 162 game pace, he was on pace last season for 48 home runs, 116 runs scored, 23 stolen bases. He was putting up career highs in slugging percentage, OPS, weighted on base average, weighted runs created plus, and also among hitters with at least 300 plate appearances last season, he was third in Major League Baseball in isolated power behind Aaron Judge and Shohei Ohtani. So I think Kyle Tucker is a guy that has that season in him. We saw glimpses of it last year. Listen, he's been a great hitter for a number of years now, but to win MVP, you have to truly pop. But I do think he's capable of having that big-time season. Now, Wrigley Field isn't exactly a hitter's park, but neither was Minute Maid Park, for that matter. So I don't think that's going to be a major issue. We saw Kyle Tucker finish 5th in AL MVP voting in 2023. The Cubs are the favorites to win the NL Central. They should be a playoff team. Not that making the playoffs is the be-all and end-all, but I think it also factors in. If you're picking between two guys who are very close, voters are probably going to look at team success as well in some cases. But that is my pick, Kyle Tucker to win MVP. And at Pinnacle, you can get him a shade under 15-1 at plus 1496 right now at the time of recording. All right, so those are our plays for MVP. Anyone have any thoughts about anyone's picks? Anyone think that any of these picks are terrible by any chance?
I like both of your picks. The Rodriguez point that Ben is making is, the smaller pool of contenders, plus the fact that Rodriguez has to be the guy who drives the offense for Seattle. And if they are contenders, he's going to get a decent amount of credit for that. And the same goes for Tucker. Is that if the Cubs go on and win the NL Central, Tucker's likely going to be the one who's driving that offense, and so there are paths here to getting a story that leads these guys towards the MVP, and it may not be the kind of thing that's enough to make them the favorite. It's enough to make them worth taking at 15-1, 20-1, where there's real value to be found.
Yeah.
All right, so we got a lot to get to here. Or go ahead, Ben. Were you gonna chime in there?
No, I love Scott's Vlad pick too, contract year. I'm always a fan of taking that. And same thing with Tucker. I mean, you can see behind me. Cubs are my team. I certainly hope Anthony's right. He's in a contract year as well. He's going to be chasing that bag here, and he's going to want to put together the best season of his career. The Cubs were really missing that superstar bat. I think they have a deep lineup, and he could be that piece that pushes them over the top to hopefully win the division for my sake.
I knew Ben was going to like my Kyle Tucker take. All right, fellas, let's move on to Cy Young now. And just like we did for MVP, I want your favorite play on the board, whether it's AL or NL. This time, let's start with Ben. Ben, give me your top play on the board for the Cy Young.
So sticking to the AL, I'm going to be betting on Jacob deGrom of the Texas Rangers. You can get him at about 11-1 at Pinnacle to win the Cy Young, the AL Cy Young. And it's almost like we've forgotten about Jacob deGrom. When healthy, and that's the big thing, I'm betting on health here. He is largely starting pitcher one in the MLB. I still think of all the baseball I've watched in my life, he's the greatest pitcher I've ever seen pitch when he's on. And I look at the situation in Texas too. Their window, they just won the World Series a couple seasons ago, but their window with their core is right now to kind of get back there and challenge again. And so is deGrom's window in his career. He's right in the prime of it, how many more bullets does he have with all the injuries he's had? He's got to push kind of his chips in too. So I think he's going to be ready and ramped to get the innings in. I think he said he wants to have 30 starts, which I think is doable. He's only thrown, I think, 10 innings in spring training, but 10 innings. And from his words too, he's excited about how it's felt. He's revamped his fastball a little bit. I think the value's there, and I like it over, again, some of the pool of the AL Cy Young. It's not speaking to me in terms of the amount of contenders as you have in the NL, with like a Skeens coming up, et cetera. So Jacob deGrom, we're one injury away from this blowing up, but that could be with any player. So
no, I like your take on deGrom, man. When you watch that guy pitch in his prime, I mean, it is electric. His stuff is some of the greatest stuff really in baseball history. Like the guy is dotting corners at like 192 mile an hour slider dropping off the table. I think he needs to reinvent himself a little bit this year. Obviously, because I don't think he's going to be throwing quite as hard as he used to, coming off all the injuries that he's dealt with. But man, if that guy can bang 30 starts this year, he's definitely going to be live to win the Cy Young. How about you, Scott? One thing I should mention, like in the NL, like Paul Skeens, massive favorite. We saw him burst onto the scene last year, put up insane numbers. I don't know, Scott, if you're going to the AL or the NL here, but are you looking at the top of the board? Are you looking a little bit further down? Where's your head at for the Cy Young?
I lean towards at least further down the board. Again, like Skeens is a very deserving favorite, but I'm not sure there's a ton of upside in getting him at plus 326 or whatever the latest price is. So I'm going to go with Corbin Burns, moving back to the National League with the Arizona Diamondbacks. He's plus 1281 at Pinnacle, and he's finished in the top 8 in Cy Young voting for 5 straight years. Won it in 2021 when he was with the Brewers. Now his strikeout rate went down last year, and that's basically the one thing to have to monitor, I guess, because if he's striking out, I think he had 8.4 strikeouts per 9 last year, which is well down from when he was winning the Cy Young. It was like 12.5 per 9, and so if the strikeout rate doesn't rebound, then I'm going to be burning my Corbin Burns money. But if he does get back up, 9, 10 strikeouts per 9 innings, then I think you can look at the Diamondbacks team should have some success, should give him some support. And he's just a really consistent ace pitcher. And I think that's going to give him a decent chance.
Yeah, I think you nailed it with Corbin Burns. I think the big thing with him is the strikeout numbers. Like if he can go back to being the strikeout pitcher he was a couple of years ago, then I think he's definitely in play to win the Cy Young. I mean, he's one of the best pitchers in baseball. He can definitely get there. All right. So I like both of your plays for the Cy Young. For me, I am also looking at the National League, and I'm looking at the LA Dodgers. So I feel like you can really look at like any starting pitcher on the Dodgers to win the Cy Young. But just based on the numbers, I'm looking at Yamamoto, who's a shade under 27-1 right now on Pinnacle at plus 2679. So obviously he made his major league debut last season, coming over from Japan, and he was an absolute monster in Japan. So in the 3 years prior to coming over to Major League Baseball, he won the Japanese version of the Cy Young all 3 years in a row, the Sawamura Award. If you look at his ERA in his last 3 years in Japan, like it's outrageous. He was 139, 168, 121. And I get it. Like the offensive numbers aren't as great in NPB as they are in Major League Baseball. Yeah. But I mean, those are just ridiculous numbers. So he comes over to Major League Baseball, only pitches 90 innings last year due to a rotator cuff strain, but puts up a 3 ERA, a 261 FIP, 105 Ks in those 90 innings. He only allowed 7 home runs in 90 innings. He was top 7 in the National League in strikeout rate. This is a guy that if he stays healthy, like we've seen him do in multiple seasons in the NPB, I don't think there's any reason why this guy can't put together a Cy Young caliber season. And it's not like he's old either. Like he's still in his mid 20s. Like this guy has room for upside. He's now gotten a taste of Major League Baseball. Listen, could I make the same argument for a guy like Blake Snell or even Tyler Glasnow? Yes, but I like the number on Yamamoto, who, like I said, you can get him at a shade under 27-1. I think he's capable of leading the major leagues in ERA. I think he can get over 200 strikeouts if we see him pitch like 175 plus innings. So that's who I'm rolling with for the Cy Young. All right. Any thoughts just around the table about any of the Cy Young plays?
Well, I think there's lots of value on Yamamoto. We're all looking for pitchers who are going to stay healthy, and so that obviously kind of hangs over any of it. But when you see the initial numbers that he had last year, it's very easy to get yourself thinking, well, what if he does that over 30 or 32 starts? Mm-hmm. And he's doing it with the Dodgers, who are going to be in the spotlight all year, and they're going to be winning games left and right. Like, there's a lot to like about that value right there.
Yeah, on Yamamoto too. I think looking at kind of how his season went last year, his rookie season in the MLB, like his first few starts, he's kind of getting accustomed to the hitters, the environment. They weren't the strongest. He had the injury, but we really saw him at his best and get to his best towards the playoffs and in the playoffs. I specifically remember against the Padres in that game 5, he really shut them down through 5 innings. That's just one game, but I think now we're really going to see that elite level pitcher that, the Dodgers invested in. Now that he's got a year under his belt too.
All right, fellas. Well, I'm glad that you both like my Yamamoto play. Let's hope that he wins the Cy Young at 27-1. All right, guys. Let's move over now to our World Series futures. So we saved the best for last year. The way that we're going to do this is we're going to go around the room, even though we're not all in the same room, of course. We're going to go around our virtual room here, and we're going to give our 2 favorite plays to win the World Series. So I think the way that we're going to do this is we'll each give our first play, and then we'll go back around and give our second favorite play. In some cases, you could even go someone near the top of the board and maybe give out a long shot, whatever you're feeling here, wherever there's value. That's what we want to give the people here. So just to set the table, the Dodgers have ridiculous odds to win the World Series. I mean, this is absolutely outrageous. Right now on Pinnacle, they are plus 275 to win the World Series. That's an implied probability of right around 27%. So basically the odds are telling us that over 1/4 of the time the Dodgers are going to win the World Series. It's honestly kind of hard to argue with the numbers because when you look at this team, honestly, they might be one of the most talented teams in the history of baseball. Their lineup is loaded. Their starting rotation is loaded. But again, I don't know if I want to take that at plus 275. So let's start off here with Scott. What is your first play looking at the World Series futures on Pinnacle?
All right, well, I'm going to stay in Arizona, and I'm going to take the Diamondbacks at plus 33.67 on Pinnacle. So we're definitely looking for upside on the value here. And I look at the Diamondbacks lineup, and yes, they could probably use another bat or two. Ketel Marte, Corbin Carroll. They added Josh Naylor to their lineup. They've got some decent hitters, but I'm leaning to the pitching here. We got Corbin Burns. They've got Zach Gallen. Merrill Kelly has been effective for them. And I think what we've seen, in 2023 when they made it to the World Series, is that in a short series, you don't necessarily have to be, the most overpowering team. You don't have to be loaded like the Dodgers, basically. That if the Diamondbacks end up in a series against the Dodgers, maybe their pitching keeps them in it, and with some timely hitting, they could get through. And so instead of taking the Dodgers at plus 275, I'll take the Diamondbacks at plus 33.67 and hope that they get a small sample victory.
Yeah, I like this Diamondbacks play. They're a great team from top to bottom. Just made an improbable run to the World Series a couple of years ago. You look at their roster now, they just keep getting better. That NL West, though, that is a beast of a division, and we'll get into that maybe with one of the plays that I have as well. But Ben, over to you now. Your first play in the World Series futures market, looking at the odds on Pinnacle.
So yeah, I couldn't justify taking a plus 275 to win an outright title in the Dodgers. So I'll take the next best odds and take the Atlanta Braves. I do think they stack up as the next best option to challenge the Dodgers and give them a run in whether it's a 5 or a 7-game series. It is a bit of a gamble with some of the injuries we're looking at too. Acuna's status, you're going to need him to really return to form, whether that's in June and kind of get back to that MVP self coming off his injury. And Spencer Strider is the other wild card in the rotation. If those two can get back and into the form that they were in, Strider with his Cy Young self, Acuna MVP, I think they have all the tools and the depth of that lineup. They can hit with anybody. And as well as the rotation and bullpen too. They kind of have all the pieces there. There aren't many holes, and I know they won't hesitate to add at the deadline when they need to. So I think the number is fair on the Braves. You're getting them at plus 925. They're the second most favored team in the MLB to win it all right now with the Yankees' recent injuries. So I think it's a worthy investment there to take the Braves.
All right, so Ben, looking towards the top of the board. Honestly, it's hard to disagree. The Braves are a nasty lineup. If Acuna can return to form, I know he's talked about maybe not stealing as many bases as he has in the past because of some of the injuries that he's dealt with, but you insert that guy into the lineup, and if we're going to get like MVP level Acuna, my goodness, that team is disgusting. All right, so unlike you guys, I'm going to start off in the American League, and the first team that I'm looking at is the Baltimore Orioles at 14-1 on Pinnacle. So they're coming off a 91-win season in 2024. They've made back-to-back postseason appearances. The thing I love the most about this team is their offense. And not just their offense, it's their offensive upside. So just going back to last season, this team finished second in Major League Baseball in home runs, fourth in runs scored, third in WRC+, fifth in WOBA. And the thing I love about this team is that the core of their offense, there's still so much upside. They're all still so young. Even when you look at Gunnar Henderson, who's now established himself as one of the best players in baseball, he's only 23. Adley Rutschman is only 27. He had a little bit of a down year last year, but is there another step for even Rutschman to take? And then you look at all the other young guys. Jackson Holliday, top pick in the draft. I know he had a rough first year last year, and the little taste that he got in Major League Baseball, but this guy is one of the top prospects for a reason. So could he have a big season? Colton Cowser, Jordan Westberg. They picked up Tyler O'Neill, who had a 31 homer season with the Red Sox last year, putting up an OPS of 847. So I love this team offensively, as good as they were offensively last year. Looking at the age of all of these guys, I still think there's room for upside, and that's what's scary, is that they can take things to another level. Now, I will admit, the one concerning thing is the pitching staff. Their starting rotation is not great. Zach Eflin, Grayson Rodriguez, who's right now dealing with elbow inflammation, which is never great to hear. And they brought in Charlie Morton, trusted veteran arm. So, maybe that they can make a move for another starter at some point. That's clearly their one area of weakness. And they're getting their closer, Felix Bautista, back, who missed all of 2024 with Tommy John. So that's my first play on the board. The Baltimore Orioles at 14-1 on Pinnacle. Now, before we get thoughts maybe about any of those plays, I want to run it back now and go over our second favorite play on the board. So, Scott, I'm going to go back to you for this one. You started with the Diamondbacks. Which team do you like next on the board?
Well, I'm going to continue my lean towards pitching here, and I'm taking the Seattle Mariners, plus 2,900 at Pinnacle. And the Mariners lineup is nothing to get excited about. I mean, I know Ben is going for Julio Rodriguez for MVP, and I think that's a sharp play, but they have a lot of holes otherwise. However, I look at their pitching staff, and I think it gives them a chance to be competitive literally every game. A rotation that has Luis Castillo, George Kirby, Logan Gilbert, Bryce Miller, Brian Wu. Like, there are very few teams that can run 5 starters out of that quality, and so basically, I expect that the pitching staff will keep them in the race, and maybe enough that they'll then decide to go add some bats. And I don't think that that's an unreasonable expectation. That if they're competitive, the Mariners can then add some bats via trade, and then if that's enough to give them a fighting chance in the postseason, I'll take a run at that at 29-1.
All right, so Ben showing love with the Mariners with his Julio Rodriguez AL MVP pick, and Scott liking them in the World Series market. So Ben, Who's the second team you're looking at outside of the Atlanta Braves?
Well, it's going to come across as a homer pick, seeing what's behind me, but the number on my Cubs, you can get them at plus 33 to 1 almost at Pinnacle. It's a little too good for me to pass up. And it really comes down to considering the state of the division and how it really has been jump ball over the last 2-3 seasons. And winning the division in baseball is paramount. It's getting a home field advantage in a playoff series, avoiding that wild card. And as long as the Brewers can kind of slow down and take a step back, I'm still not sold that they will. The Cubs, they have no excuses now. They have to go and win this division and get in. And then once you're in, kind of anything can happen. See if something happens with the Dodgers playing them, different story. But getting in is the first step. And adding Kyle Tucker, I mentioned earlier, that is what this lineup lacked so much, was that superstar, that one guy you circle. It's a deep lineup. They've got good production from just about every position. And now that those positions will be protected better with Tucker in the middle there, and Tucker will have his protection too with them around. And the pitching staff is quite deep and loaded. You got a lot of lefties, Justin Steele, Shota, Managa, coming off a great rookie season. They'll be heading that rotation. And then they added a closer, Alex Presley, coming off quite a bad year last year with the Astros. Hopefully a change of scenery, he can revamp. But they were missing that true closer kind of last year. Porter Hodge stepped in and got them some saves when they needed them down the stretch. They did just miss the playoffs, but hopefully he can slide back in, and those other high leverage arms that they had, they just slot back a spot. And again, I like them more than the Pirates. I don't think are ready there to win the division. The Reds, not sold. The Brewers, they should. And the NL, aside from the Dodgers and kind of that NL West, it can kind of be taken. The Braves are going to be there. The Phillies haven't put it together. So, and it comes back to the number for me too, like 33 to 1 for a team that is in good shape to win their division. I'll take that any day.
Yeah, and outside of the Dodgers, who are massive minus 622 favorites to win the NL West, the Cubs are actually like the second biggest favorites on the board to win their division. They're minus 106 to win the NL Central. Made some really solid additions in the offseason. So yeah, Ben, it's all right, man. You can homer it up there with your Cubs. I like the analysis there. All right, so I had the Orioles in the AL. I really like this team in the National League, and that is the San Diego Padres. And right now at Pinnacle, you can get them at a shade under 20 to 1 at plus 1991. I get it. The Dodgers are in the way, not only in the division, but also just in general. I mean, it's going to be tough for any team to beat the Dodgers in a playoff series, but this Padres team, I love them from top to bottom, coming off a 93-win season last year, and I think, I see little reason to believe that they can't replicate that in 2025. Offensively, really like this team. Obviously anchored by Fernando Tatis Jr., one of the best players in baseball. Jackson Merrill, who had a phenomenal rookie season last year. Manny Machado still getting the job done. They were 6th in WRC Plus last year, 6th in WOBA, 7th in slugging percentage. They had the lowest strikeout rate in Major League Baseball. And then you look at their pitching staff. Dylan Cease, power arm at the top. Michael King. They brought in Nick Pivetta, another strikeout pitcher. Yu Darvish can still spin it. They're just a very deep team across the board. Obviously, they've had trouble getting by the Dodgers in recent years. In 3 of the last 5 years, they have lost to the Dodgers in the playoffs in the NLDS. So again, it's always going to come down to beating that beast of a team. But when I look at this team from top to bottom, they just kind of have everything. And that's what I look for. And I know I talked about the Orioles saying that they have a weak pitching staff, but unlike the Baltimore Orioles, I think this team has a great pitching staff. And again, you never know who any of these teams are going to add around the trade deadline. But I really like the price on the Padres at a shade under 20 to 1 on Pinnacle. All right, fellas. Before we close this thing out, any final thoughts on anything, whether it's MVP, Cy Young, or World Series futures? Any other takes you want to throw out there before we wrap this thing up?
Well, I think it's funny going into a season where there is such a prohibitive favorite to win the World Series, prohibitive favorites to win the MVP in each league, because it seems almost invariably that that's not what's going to happen. It's very rare that you can get, back-to-back MVPs or win back-to-back World Series. So, I think it makes more sense to go looking further down the board for value.
Ben, how about you? Any final thoughts?
Yeah, in agreement to that. I think last year, even when the Dodgers added Ohtani, we had a similar feeling like, oh my gosh, they're too loaded. Like, they're going to win for sure. And they did, but I'll caution too, baseball is probably the most out of the four sports where you get into a series, kind of anything can happen. The Padres last year, I feel like that was their time last year too. They had the Dodgers 2-1 in San Diego for a game, and then their offense just went on the coldest streak they've been on all season at the worst time possible. So I hope you're right, Anthony. I really like the Padres too. I'd love to see the Dodgers go down. But I just caution everyone, invest yourself in the season still. There's a lot of ball to be played. A lot can happen. We still have no idea which direction this is going to go.
No, you guys said it. Expect the unexpected, especially in baseball. We know how this goes. It's very similar to hockey in that way where, sure, there's a group of teams that are probably above the rest and have a legitimate chance to win the World Series, but you get into a postseason series, we've seen it so many times where the underdog, the team that's not as good on paper, that didn't have as great of a season, a lot of times will just will cause an upset just because that's how baseball is. I mean, weird stuff just happens. Great offensive teams go cold. A couple pitchers get hot, and then anything could happen. So, yes, the Dodgers are massive favorites to win the World Series. Are they going to win? I don't know. That remains to be seen. I'm going to say they don't win the World Series. Maybe that's my hot take of today's show. +2. I can't take them at +274.
No. Maybe we can get a line on that. Not to win the World Series. We'll talk to the trading team, maybe.
Yeah, we'll have to talk to the trading team. We'll get something up on that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for our World Series MVP and Cy Young Futures episode here on Pinnacle. As always, if you are betting on any of the futures, make sure you are checking out Pinnacle Sportsbook because you are going to get the best odds and the best payouts on a lot of these bets that we discussed, especially when you're looking at some of the other prices across the market. We will be back with some more content heading into the season, looking at regular season win totals. So make sure you check out that video as well. But that's going to do it for this one. For Scott Cullen and Ben Barclay, I'm Anthony Bruno. Best of luck this season. I hope you have some winning plays that you can cash 5-6 months down the road. And remember to bet smart and bet Pinnacle.